Hey guys, this is Tauna, and today we're going to be going over the top 20 underrated rares from 2025 under $1. So we're going to be talking about just a whole bunch of really rare, well, not really rare, rares that are underrated. Like, people are kind of underestimating them. I think that they are generally really, really great cards, depending on the deck. Some of them are a little bit more niche, but a lot of them will fit into a bunch of different decks that are going to be great. And all of them, as I said, are under $1 currently. I aim for a variety of different cards here, but obviously some sets were more focused on a certain thing, so you'll see more of that kind of stuff there. So let's get into it. First up here, we have Demonic Junker, which I really, really like. I think that it is an underrated card in a whole bunch of, not necessarily vehicle, but artifact-based decks, right? So it's got affinity for artifacts. So if you've got a whole bunch of food, clues, treasures, tokens, they're going to be great. Not necessarily reliant on needing to have a vehicle-based deck or anything, but if you've got enough artifacts, this just becomes 1 black mana to destroy up to 1 target creature for each player. Now you can destroy your own as well, 1 creature from yourself, and if you destroy one of your own, then it's going to come in as a 6/5 with crew 2, which is pretty decent. Again, the thing that kind of pushes this over the top into, in my opinion, being really great is this affinity for artifacts. Without that, not that great. But even if you have 4 artifacts out, right, it's going to reduce the cost by 4. That's going to bring it down to 3 mana to destroy 3 things and get a creature out and, potentially get a trigger off your own thing dying anyway. Next up, we've got the Medicant Core Guide Light. So this one here is a really great card in any artifact-based deck. Now, it does have that annoying start your engines thing where you need to build up your speed and stuff, which is kind of gross. But speed, in my opinion, in Commander wasn't quite as bad. It was actually pretty easy to be able to build up your speed. And even then, you can potentially make, deals with people. Now, the strong part about this is once you do get that max speed, whenever you cast an artifact spell, you can pay 1 to copy it. So any big artifacts that you've got coming out, boom, pay 1, and now you've got a copy of it, which can be absolutely bonkers. We got Avaya Auto Mech Artisan. Now, you're probably looking at this and being like, oh, this has to be a vehicle-based deck, and to me, I don't think this even has to be necessarily a great creature-based deck. It obviously works well with creatures, especially with this part here, the tapping to put a creature onto the battlefield. But the strong part about this, in my opinion, is making it so that all creatures that attack opponents gain trample. That means your opponent's creatures will gain trample as well, which is really, really great. The kind of, the benefits of having it with artifact creatures and stuff like that are great, and putting out vehicles onto the battlefield, it works well with that. But overall, just being able to give all of your opponents trample whenever they're attacking your other opponents can be incredibly strong. We got the Dragon Fireblade moving into Dragon Storm here. This one, I just really think is very underrated. If your commander is a 3-color commander, right? A 3-color Voltron commander. We're going to play this for 1. We're going to then equip it for 1. And then it's going to give that creature hexproof from monocolored. Most spot removal, single target removal, is going to be monocolored, which means that it's just going to completely make it so that they're not able to do anything about it. I think this is just really great. The equip 4, if you kind of, just read that part of it, not great. But once you get to a 3-color commander, even I would argue a 2-color commander is not too bad for this to give it hexproof from that monocolored, because monocolored, as I said, most of your single target removal, Path of Exile and, swords and any of the black destroy creature things, they're all going to be monocolored. Next up, we've got Naga Flesh Crafter. So, this is a clone spell, right? It comes into the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield. That's great. It's already, doing its thing. It's coming out. It's, making a copy of whatever creature you want it to. But the stronger part about this is after it dies, you pay 2 and a blue when it's in the graveyard. Exile this card from your graveyard. You're going to put a +1/+1 counter on one of your creatures, non-legendary creatures, and then all of your other creatures, legendary or not, will become a copy of that creature. This can be a huge finisher in certain decks if you've got like, a whole bunch of little 1/1s out there and then you turn them all into like, a copy of your spell slinging pinger or something like that, right? Boom, now you're just going to be able to deal 20 damage each time you cast an instant or sorcery. That's pretty good. Overall, I just think that this is really kind of underrated because people kind of, look at that and just don't think about the fact that you could really, really screw up someone's, whole day by making your whole board into a copy of any of the very powerful non-legendary creatures. Like, so I was thinking about this just now. If I have this in my Miram deck, I have it dead, Miram, and if I have a copy of Miram, or a copy of any of the other creatures like that Miram's made a copy of, because Miram makes non-legendary copies, right? I copy one of those non-legendary copies with Naga Fleshcrafter because this does not specify it has to be non-token as well. And boom, now I've got like, 50, well, not 50, I've got like, 10 Terrors of the Peaks or something. That's absolutely crazy. Even though Terrace of the Peaks isn't legendary anyway, so I could copy it anyway. We've got Will of the Teamer here. It's a copy spell, so it makes a token copy of something, and can also be a huge draw card deck, right? Like you can make, like, without having your commander out, it's not great. But once you've got your commander out, and depending on, what deck you're running it in, any kind of blue deck, you've got ways to be able to protect your commander in that. You play this, you make a big token copy of something, and then you draw a whole bunch of cards. There's just a whole bunch of different ways to make use of this to just create a huge, a huge hand and a huge creature. Now, if you guys are liking the content so far, make sure you guys do subscribe. Only 30% of people who actually watch the channel are subscribed currently. We're trying to hit 25,000 by the end of the year. And this is the best channel for you guys to come to for all that instant speed breaking news. As soon as something's announced, we've got it here for you guys to look at and stuff. But we also cover a whole bunch of different cards you can buy, especially precons, a bunch of precon content. So make sure you subscribe for that kind of stuff. All right, moving into the next one here, we got Firion Wild Rose Warrior. I really, really like Firion. In any equipment-based deck, you're going to be able to create token copies of those equipments whenever they come in. Now, you do need to sacrifice them at the beginning of the next end step, but the equip cost is reduced. I just really like it. It's really great to be able to create token copies of these very strong equipments, equip them for much cheaper, and then get the huge benefits for them straight away. But even that's not even the most powerful part. The powerful part, I mean, that's incredibly powerful too. But giving all your equipped creatures haste is also just quite strong in any equipment-based deck. We got Luciox's Sacrifice here. So this is pay blue for a counterspell. Now you can either pay an additional 2, or you can sacrifice a legendary creature you control. In a bunch of decks, this is going to be very, very useful because, you don't mind if your legendary creatures die. You can bring them back in any number of different other ways. Or you can pay the 3 to make it so you can counter stuff. But the fact that it can counter activated abilities and triggered abilities, I think is just really, really great. We got Fandaniel Telefori Asian. I probably butchered that name, but I fucking hate this card. My wife has used this card against us like once, and I've used it against someone else. Like someone else has used it against me before. For each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard, you're going to lose 2 life at the beginning of the end step unless you sacrifice a non-token creature. That can get very, very strong very, very quickly, especially when you add in the fact that you're also surveilling with it. So all of a sudden, they've got 7 cards in their graveyard, and now you're losing 14 life unless you sacrifice something. Not all decks want to lose their non-token creatures, especially like, a Voltron-esque deck, or, one that's just got like, you've got like 3 creatures out there doing stuff. You don't want to sacrifice stuff, but you also don't want to lose 14 life until my wife decides to put out Y'shtola as well, the one that makes it so she's got an additional end step, and now it's, oh, now I need to sacrifice 2 things or I'm going to lose 28 life. It is the worst. I hate it. We've got Red 13 Proud Warrior here. So, obviously, again, some people just look at one part of the card, and you probably look at this and you're like, Auras and equipment, gross. But it's any modified creatures will gain Vigilance and Trample. I think Vigilance is very underrated, especially in red-green. You're not going to get a huge amount of Vigilance kind of in that permanently like this. And then trample is just obviously incredibly powerful as well. But once you start putting +1/+1 counters out on everything, in addition to, him having vigilance and trample himself, and, you can, if you do have auras and equipments in your deck, return stuff with that. That's good. But just getting that vigilance and trample out on all your modified creatures, it's just very, very strong. For the cost of three mana, that's great. We've got Pain for All here, moving into Edge of Eternities. So Edge of Eternities, I think this card's just really great in so many different decks. Especially like in my Wolverine deck, this is quite strong. You enchant a creature you control. You have to enchant something you control. And then when it enters, first of all, it's going to fight. Well, sorry, it's going to bite something. The enchanted creature deals damage to another thing. So it's potentially a removal spell there as well, depending if you've got, a big creature, which, you're in red, potentially Gruul. You're going to have big creatures there. But then the second part here, whenever enchanted creature is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to each opponent. If they're trying to chump block your creature, now all of a sudden they're going to take damage from it. Or if, they happen to have a big creature and you swing your creature in, you've got you've got a 7/7 that you're swinging into someone. Oh no, you've got a 9/9. Whatever will you do? Do you want to take 7 damage in addition to this thing dying? We'll see. There is just a bunch of different uses for this that I think is just really great. We got the long range sensor here. So this is whenever you attack a player, you're going to put a charge counter on this artifact. Now, one thing to keep in mind is in Commander, you have 3 other players. You can attack 3 other players. You can get 3 charge counters on this in each combat. But keep in mind, there are also charge counters. They can be proliferated and stuff. And then you can pay 1 mana, remove 2 charge counters from it. Again, you don't even need to tap this. So you can do this multiple times per turn to discover 4. So you're going to exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card with mana value 4 or less, and then you can either play it without paying its mana cost or put it into your hand. In my Zuko deck, this is going to be absolutely bonkers because I'm just going to get that exile trigger from him. I'm going to get to, cast stuff for free, basically. For paying for 1 mana. You're paying 1 mana to play something for 4. It's random, sure, but still. There's just a huge amount of different uses for this, especially in like an exile-based deck or a combat-focused deck or, just a whole bunch of decks. We've got Hide on the Ceiling here moving into Spider-Man. I think this one is great because it's going to exile your stuff, your artifacts or creatures, and then going to return them to the battlefield under your control at the beginning of the next end step. So you could use this to protect so much of your board. There is one from Avatar that's very similar as well that has Waterbend attached to it too. That's great. But I really like this one as well. Both of them are really good. But this one here lets you flicker your artifacts too, which is good. Depending on what your deck is, you might want to protect your Soul Ring. You might want to protect, your different mana rocks or something like that. Someone's trying to blow up your mana rocks. You can just flicker them and then they'll go away and then they'll come back at the next end step. It's just a great way to avoid removal. We've got the Parker Luck here, as well as the fact that, it avoids removal, but it also makes it so that everyone else, if it's like, a board wipe, their stuff's still getting removed. Parker Luck, I think, is just a very, very interesting card. You can use this in one of 2 ways. You can use it and target 2 opponents. Then they're both going to not draw, but draw. And then the other one loses life equal to their mana cost, which is mana value, which is good because now, they're both taking damage. Or you could use it for yourself and you can change each, upkeep, which way you want to do, end step, which way you want to do this. Do you want to draw the card? Do you want someone else to draw a card? And then they all lose life, and you can abuse this by having your deck be really high mana cost stuff and then theirs not. In stuff like a clash based deck, this is really funny because you're going to have high mana value stuff and they're not necessarily. So they're going to lose, say, 10 life, you lose 2. I think that's a good trade-off. Or you could just use it to make your opponents all lose life together, which is funny. We've got this Shadow of the Goblin. Now, I believe that only this borderless version is less than $1 at the moment. However, it's a quite strong card. At the beginning of your first main phase, you discard a card and draw a card. That's good. That alone is extra card draw in red at each beginning of the main phase. You can take advantage of, discarding stuff like that, which is obviously the whole point, is to then be able to play them from the graveyard with, because it's the Goblin, but you can use it with exile-based decks as well, right? the ones that are like whenever you discard a card, exile it, and then you can play it from exile and stuff. That's useful. Or you could just play stuff from exile and deal damage to each opponent, which is good as well. We got Spider Sense. I think the buy a box promo as well is the only one that is less than $1 here. So this one here, you can either pay 1 in a blue, which is okay, or you can pay just a blue if you web sling. So you return something back to your hand. There is a bunch of different uses for that as well. Bounce something back to your hand to be able to play it again later on. Bounce it back to your hand to protect it from a removal, but then you can also counter something else. You can use this to counter instants, sorceries, or triggered abilities. Countering triggered abilities, I think, is really strong, and I think that's very underrated, right? There are so many commanders that are like, whenever you do this really powerful thing. So if you counter their really powerful thing that happen, like a Pantlaza, right? Pantlaza, whenever you play whenever a dinosaur enters the battlefield, you're going to discover equal to its toughness, I believe it is, or power, whichever one it is. Either way, countering that, it means that it's not going to trigger again for the rest of that turn, as well as, it's just kind of stop them in their, them getting free things. Right, we've got Earthbender's Ascension moving into Avatar. So I think this one's great because you play it, you're going to Earthbend 2. So you're essentially getting a 2/2. One of your lands is becoming a 2/2 creature. And then you're going to get a basic land out onto the battlefield as well. And it triggers its ability as well straight away. The landfall, put a quest counter on it. And then you get to put +1 counters on things and gain trample as well once your lands come in. In a land-based deck, when you've got a whole bunch of lands entering, you are going to put out a whole bunch of 1/1s, 1/1 counters onto things, as well as then also give things trample. Fantastic. And along the same lines, we've got the Firebender Ascension. So I think that people are kind of overlooking this section here, like the quest part. It's going to take a little bit to trigger, right? You got to get that 4 counters. But every attacking trigger is going to trigger again. And there is a bunch of equipments that also give your creatures attack triggers, right? So it's like equipped creature has, whenever this creature attacks, do this. So that is just wonderful to copy that, as well as you're copying firebending. Like if you attack with firebending and you've got something with firebending, firebending 4, and you attack, you're going to trigger that again, which is fantastic. We got the Spirit Water Revival here. So this is paying 1 and 2 blue to draw a card, to draw 2 cards, which is not great. However, you can then waterbend 6. So either tapping things down, your artifacts or creatures, or just paying it with mana, or a combination of both. And then if you do that, then you get to shuffle your graveyard into your library, draw 7 cards, and then have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game, which is a wonderful thing. It's such a useful ability. Stuff like Seagate's Restoration is used all the time. The fact that you can tap down your artifacts and creatures to help pay for this is really good. Reckless Blaze, finally, this one here is from the Avatar Eternal, which is from the Jumpstart boosters. So you're going to deal 5 damage to each creature. 5 is good, right? 5 is good. It's going to kill a whole bunch of creatures, whether it's your opponents or your own little weenies, which is what we want, because then whenever a creature you control dealt damage this way dies, it's going to add red mana. In a goblin deck, right? We've got a goblin, we've got our big leader goblin, we've got like Ovika or something like that as our big leader goblin. We're going to play this, we're going to kill all our goblins, we're going to get a huge amount of red mana that we can use because we've got a million little 1/1 goblins, and boom, from there you're just going to be able to completely pop off. There is just a huge amount of different uses for this, and I think that it's just a fantastic kind of removal. And I think 5 damage is kind of like a good break point, right? Like a bunch of things like 4/4, like 3/4 and stuff. 5 is like that next step up where people have invested a little bit more into it, and even then the 5 damage stuff is still dying. Like the 5 toughness stuff is still dying. It's the 6 toughness stuff that's surviving, which is they're really big stuff, but you're just going to wipe out all the little stuff and then get a huge amount of red mana that you can abuse in a bunch of different ways. But that's it for today, guys. Let me know what you guys think. And if you are picking any of these up, make sure you head on down to pick them up from Mana Pool as well, our official, affiliate there. I hope you guys had a wonderful day, and goodbye.